We might need to. There we go. Okay, well, we might actually get started. I'm not sure if folks can see me. I can see Craig, but that's okay. Um, my name is Kath Hoban. I'm the Director of Fundraising and Public Engagement at Care Australia. And a couple of years ago, when this project was initiated, I was the Care International Chair of the Global Fundraising Directors Group. So that enabled me to have the privilege of representing Care International in the Reimagining Fundraising project, which I'm sure you are all very familiar with, or some of you may be, but it's an aside from today. Um, at the same time as Reimagining, a group of 12 INGOs were working towards post COVID a rediscovery of an attempt to reset fundraising in new markets with new generations, with new ways of working that were non traditional to our existing ways of working. Care International, along with also another group of INGOs, had started something called the Pledge for Change. And the Pledge for Change was about, I guess, in a different way, reimagining resource mobilization, where the partners in the countries that we all operate with, we could somehow shift the resources more closely to where we operate and shift the paradigm of power and I guess resources from sometimes, the global north to the global south, but often just from wealthy countries to less wealthy countries. So this was incredibly timely that we were able to participate in this process and put forward an application to Reimagining Fundraising to co-pilot this event with this wonderful organisation headed by Craig Pollard in New Zealand. And we've been lucky enough to participate and see the benefits, but also the challenges of this project over the last year. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to my Reimagining Fundraising peers on this call and not on this call. And I will now hand over to Craig Pollard to give us an overview of the project. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Kath. All right, I'm just going to share my screen here. Can you see that?
Yep. Yes, we can.
Thanks, Kath. We were very surprised a couple of years ago to find out that we were the highest evaluated project when it came to the Reimagining Fundraising International Innovation Challenge, because we didn't feel very innovative. We were sort of talking with sort of people with blockchain and AI, and what we were proposing was actually relatively simple. It was about the fundamental idea was about bridging the capacity, shifting and pivoting the capacities and capabilities of nonprofit partners in Asia, Africa, Middle East, and Latin America, and equipping and exploring the whole sort of menu of fundraising options available to them and helping them with strategic frameworks and equipping them with regionally relevant fundraising experience and expertise via what was a global faculty. So I just want to, it's been a real roller coaster the last 2 years. We went from a cohort of 24 people to having 1,039 people registered on our program in 107 different countries. So it's been a very steep learning curve. We've learned an awful lot over the last 2 years. And so I just want to share some of the impacts and challenges from the last program. For us, it comes down to this. It's about broadening perspectives on resource mobilization, shifting organizations, partners beyond institutional donors, equipping them to do institutional fundraising better, but going beyond that, building confidence so that they can explore a whole different range of fundraising opportunities, both at the local, national, regional, and global level as well. And the um, this is this is sort of within context. There's been a 10-year journey to this point, and we have been working with Scaling Up Nutrition for the past 10 years. This year is our 10th anniversary of working with them. And the whole idea behind the program is that this has been an exploration, and the idea is that doing the program is doing the work of fundraising. So it's practical. We center holistic approaches, and our focus is very much on the ecosystem, building the ecosystem. For the first time this year, we're getting referrals from past participants recommending people within their countries and their networks to take part in this program. But and they come to us, people come to us 6, 7 years later and say, look, this is the impact that you had on us. I was in Benin 6 years ago and I had no option to fundraise, but now we have built this donor network and we have a different set of circumstances and a different set of opportunities. But there's also the immediate contribution as well. So our focus is on the ecosystem, building and equipping and exploring mainly high value fundraising approaches. But there's also this immediate impact. This year we had just over 1,000 participants in 107 countries. 95% of those are in Asia, Africa, Middle East, Latin America. And the numbers have actually changed since this. We've had the average confidence, and this is a big indicator for us from before the program, in terms of we asked people how confident they felt about fundraising, generally and specifically, and the average score was 2.9 out of 5 before the program, and after the program, the confidence was at 4.2 out of 5. And nearly out of a total of 1,000 people, we actually gave 117 people certificates. They hit the participation level, and now it's just hit half of those people. 50% of them raised a significant donation during the program term and attributed that to what they learned on the program. It's now actually more than 600,000 British pounds has been sort of attributed to last year's program. And in addition to that, another 25% of people are waiting decisions on £5 million worth of funding proposals, and said that the program built improved the quality of their strategy, their positioning, and the proposals. And that's not including a share of a £19 million donation as well. That's separate, but is part of the program. And what we're committed, we find that every year the program evolves, gets a little bit less imperfect than it was, and we're sort of learning and embedding the learning each year. So these are sort of some of the headlines in terms of the inputs. We had 25 members of the global faculty from Myanmar and Cambodia, Ghana, Uganda, Kenya, Argentina, Peru, really truly global faculty sharing their regional experiences. This was deeply valued. We delivered 35 live teaching webinars, a series of clinics, specialist sessions. We had, what else did we have? We had a podcast. I think we did nearly 25 episodes of that. We had regional panels. We had in-person specific regional seminars. And we started to build a community. We had over 120 people evaluate the program, and on average, they spent more than 30 minutes evaluating our program, which felt really humbling and sort of put everything into context, that they would take that amount of time, that it was that important to them, and it meant that much to the participants to do that. As I said, with 50% of participants raised funding, £600,000 raised during the program and attributed to the program, not by us, and then another £5 million worth of income pipelined. 99% of the people, the participants, would recommend the program, and 99% say they're highly satisfied with the program. So and these are some of the some of the grants that have been raised, a share of £19 million, through to funding for chairs and equipment for raising chickens. And I think this sort of speaks to the diversity of the people we're working with. There was another group fundraised locally within their own community in Benin for an oil seed mill. Through to $150,000 US, $5,000 a month, $30,000, all of these sort of big chunks of cash, but it goes across the whole board, which speaks to the relevance and the fundamental thing that participants are looking for, which is structure which is structure around to make sense and bring clarity and confidence to the crazy, messy thing that is fundraising. This is just one of, I think we have 125 of these sorts of testimonials. Sort of 40 or 50 of them have actual dollar amounts in them. It's been a heck of a year. So we have these are just some of the the participants' perspective we're sharing. And this is, African Leadership University in Kenya. And this is about, where do we begin fundraising? And we go from the strategic frameworks all the way to where do you start? What are the tools and tactics once you've made those decisions and choices? That's the share of £19 million, which is in Sierra Leone. And for us, one of the key outputs is the global faculty here, where we've started to build and work really well with a whole group of brilliant people who have deep experience of fundraising and building high value funding partnerships across all of our regions, whether it's Southeast Asia, whether it's Latin America, whether it's social innovation in Latin America, whether it's corporate partnerships in Southern India. So this is about unlocking that. And it's becoming a key fixture, and it's something we want to lean more heavily on and focus on next year. This is sort of a snapshot of what the Fundraising Radicals looks like. That's only 8 of our sort of 25 strong global faculty. We have a very lean team. Everyone sort of contracts and sort of a lot of goodwill to build this and to keep it running. This is the global reach of last year in terms of participation. So there are a few sort of grey areas across Asia, Africa, Southern Asia, Southeast Asia, Latin America, Africa, but not many. We feel we've got very, very broad coverage, but not very deep coverage. We sort of have maybe 50 or 60 people coming from Nigeria, 30, 40 coming from Pakistan. So it starts to spread out when we get to places like Yemen and Somalia and South Sudan. And then there's the partner perspective as well. This is Scaling Up Nutrition. As I said, we've been working with them for 10 years, sort of from the early days, exploring how do we build toolkits and consult with NGOs and nonprofits who are based in Asia, Africa, Middle East, and what do we need? How do we work effectively in partnership? So it's been a long-term project, but they see the difference in terms of how their civil society members, alliances actually approach them, interact with them, and it's from their perspective, it's lifted the entire that entire cohort of people and civil society organizations in terms of how they interact and how effective they are now at fundraising. As I said, this is 10 years of learning. RAXTI, which is a Care International partner, just another one of the impacts, sort of thinking beyond the high value, the applicability of what we teach and share and explore is about sort of things like donor segmentation and personalized communication, and they're having big impacts locally as well. We started in Zambia with 12 street children civil society organizations. And since then we've trialed it, and the reimagining fundraising came in 2022, 2023, and was a key opportunity to lift and explore and try to see if this would work at scale. We have found that we had way too many people this year is the number one learning. And it's incredibly difficult to build a meaningful interaction with that many people. So we're taking that learning into next year. The evaluation's been fantastic. We're exploring new models of sharing fundraising as well. So we've been trialing that in with indigenous owned remote forest communities in Papua New Guinea as an extreme example to see how do we equip people and organizations to interact and build funding partnerships, and that's delivered $2 million euros. And then our plans for next year. Again, it comes back to this, move shifting from public, international, institutional corporation to think about creative development financing. Lots of other different actors, but it's really about presenting all of the choices and sharing strategic frameworks and insight into how to make smart choices around how you structure your fundraising, how you design your fundraising, and how you do it, resource it, what capabilities, capacities you need. Next year, this is it's been a lot. I'm not going to lie. I've held a lot of this for the last 18 months, and it has completely exhausted me. And I took some time off over the summer, and we've consulted with our partners and following the participant feedback, thinking about how can we take all of the best things from last year, because this whole idea, this was a pilot, see what works and then continue with what works, and don't be frightened, I think, to drop the things that don't work. So this is where we are at the moment in terms of thinking about next year. We're thinking of launching something called an alternative certificate in global funding for local impact. And the global funding there is a sort of global definition of global, geographical, but also thinking broadly about how do you think about funding globally, all the types and opportunities, and how do you focus and deliver and wrangle that to resource your local impact. This program and this evolution is not like most fundraising training. We have very, very robust conversations about everything from race and gender, power, colonialism, capitalism. It's a space where people feel free to talk about those things, and we have very honest conversations about well-being and lots of other things. It's grounded, the idea is this is not grounded in experiences of white fundraisers in North America and Europe. This is grounded in the experiences of the global faculty and Asia, Africa, Middle East, Latin America. And it's being designed with and for. We're doing the curriculum at the moment with next year's global faculty. Everybody's got an equal say. It's all being designed and created and crafted and coming along beautifully. Our aim is to bring it down from 1,000 participants to focus on 100 participants next year. And the key bit of feedback we've got is that the webinars are great. Yeah, there's two bits of feedback, is that it was over too long a period. So we're condensing it now to 20 weeks, 2 10-week terms. And also there is a real desire for mentoring and coaching. So we're going to do the webinars alongside regional small coaching groups. And those coaching and mentoring is going to be done by people who are in the region, whether it's Myanmar, Southeast Asia, Philippines, West Africa, Southern Africa, East Africa, Latin America. And yeah, we're talking to a number of your organizations, I suspect, about formal certification of this, because we don't just want cohorts, because this is the next stage. We're looking for cohorts, organizations to fund places for next year, but we also want these organizations to formally certificate this as well. And this means going through your internal systems and processes to make sure that's embedded And this is the idea is that, yes, we share, we explore, we equip, but this is also recognizing that fundraising is really tough. Stakes are high. This work is very new for a lot of people. The infrastructure is not there. It's unproven in many contexts. So we explore all funding options. We cover traditional and alternative fundraising as well. We're sort of turning up the volume on social enterprise, social innovation, social contracting, and also building critical thinking into this about being able to make hard choices about funding sources. And so and also aiming beyond the idea of well-funded, supporting participants and peers towards becoming sort of well and funded, which feels a lot more sustainable. And the program-wide return investment is actually has just gone past 5 for last year, and the longer term return on investment has exceeded our expectations, and I think is increasing over 40. So that's where we are. That's sort of the program structure. Webinars, regional mentoring circles, project workshops. We'll be doing a specific project. People will be doing that over the 20 weeks, and there'll be an assess project at the end. There's going to be lots of elective content as well. We have this as our sort of timeline, registration and onboarding next from January next year. We're having a global funding festival. So that's our plan, and we're planning to run this annually. And again, these 3 pillars: teaching, mentoring, and the final project. I will share this PDF afterwards because I want to leave plenty of time for discussion. We're also bringing equity-centered design into this because it's important in its own right, but increasingly it's becoming a key part of funders' decisions and participants' interests as well, as we talk about power. So Jess has been a long-term collaborator of ours. She's going to be delivering a chunk of the curriculum as well. We're having a podcast, online community we're building. We have newsletter, blogs and vlogs, and global funding festival where we bring donors in, we bring people who have deep experience and sharing lots of different things beyond fundraising that sort of ally to fundraising and help make fundraising better.
Thank you, Craig. Amazing. I think I might just add a few comments in terms of CARE International being the co-sponsor in our experience, and then would love to open it up to questions. There's already some in the chat, which I'm happy to provide to you, Craig. I'm happy to host the Q&A. So I think from CARE's experience, just to take it a few steps back, I think one of our key learnings, because this, as Craig explained in his presentation, this has been a 10-year project that really reimagining and fundraising and CARE International were, I think, fortunate enough at a very good time to come together and take it to a next level. So the pilot was more about bringing the project in vertically as opposed to horizontally that had previously occurred. And I think from CARE's perspective, one of our key learnings, or a number of our key learnings, has been how incredibly difficult it is across an international confederation to facilitate consistent promotion, buy-in, and championing across the organization for these sort of projects that are seen as a side project. So I think, I don't know what that means other than I think incredible amount of due diligence needs to go into actually making sure the leaders in the organization are championing it. Also, folks are busy, and certainly our partners in the Global South and our partners for CARE Australia in the Pacific and the Pacific Islands are very busy. And I think time needs to be taken to work with management to understand how this complements their existing strategies and how it complements their training and development needs and is not set outside of that. And one of the challenges that Craig and I had was a number of the CARE participants were signing up and signing in from their own personal accounts and not from their CARE accounts. They were doing this program on the side of their desk, not as part of their formal work commitment and requirements, and part of a perhaps broader revenue strategy. So I think that there's some just of the internal learnings for us, in terms of, the direction forward that you put out there, Craig. I think there actually has to be some kind of financial co-commitment of the organization, in order for them to value it and value their staff participating, and whether or not that's through scholarships or whatever. I'm sure you and we will continue the conversation, but it needs to move from the side of people's personal development desks to something that organizations value, and can be brought back into the organization conversations. And it's definitely happened in parts. I think, Craig, your broader presentation that I viewed earlier, we had the country director of Care Lao who, has said it's just basically changed their entire revenue strategy. And Ninsha from Rux Thai, who's on the Fundraising Directors International Group, it's changed their perspective as well. So in pockets, it's been incredible, but we just need to, it needs to just, like you said, just become a bit more embraced by the sector. But I think that was generally the only thing I wanted to say. And just also wanted to acknowledge, in case we forget at the end, to thank the Reimagining Fundraising, to thank Twilio, who were the sponsors of the grant, and also thank Care International, who also co-contributed financially to our pilot. And Craig, would you like me to facilitate the first question?
That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. This question comes from Anne from SOS Children's Villages.
Hi,
When
Anne.
training colleagues in regions like Eastern Africa, we often come across a lack of market research and insights into different donor segments. Is that also your experience, and how do you handle that? And do you have any trends that you can share from different regions?
I it's really difficult. I think I East Africa is maybe more established in some ways, um, but I'm increasing because our focus is on high value partnerships. It's we push this organic approach to funding, to building these personal relationships, to positioning organization, to sort of moving away from this. So we talk a lot about blue ocean strategy. Okay, so red ocean strategy. This sort of competing in markets where the waters are bloodied with the competition, to starting to make the competition irrelevant by creating our own markets for fundraising. And these are people and organizations that are just not on the radar of other organizations and people. These are organizations, these are corporates that have never donated, where they're the organizations where the only one in the room. So we don't, I am always nervous of trends because my innate instinct is that there are always going to be fish swimming against that are succeeding and doing really well, and that's part of what we're trying to do here. I think we're trying to push people away from sort of following the herd and following these sort of Western ideas and ways of approaching fundraising. I had a fantastic conversation with Natula Wilson, who's one of our global faculty. She's based at Ashesi University in Ghana. And she just, we were laughing about the idea of trust-based philanthropy coming back. And it's just like that never left West Africa. That's how philanthropy works in West Africa. It's just incredibly closed. These circles of trust, people donate into their communities. They don't often talk about it, but these facilitative sort of communities and of this sort of idea of philanthropy is incredibly difficult to see from the outside. And that's what we're trying to get people to do, is to sort of step back from our perspective and say, look, we are not the experts in your region. You are the experts in your region, your network, what's realistic, what's possible. And yeah, so sorry, that's a long way of going about saying I don't know about the fundraising trends, but I'm also really nervous about making generalizations around fundraising, because I feel like organizations and people make their own choices and sort of fates.
No, thanks, Greg. And maybe in time, your alumni might start their own trend analysis of what's going on in their countries. Um,
But this is interesting because what we're seeing is creating these clusters of peers as well, and that's a big part of what we're doing as well. People who would ordinarily be connected, and they're working for multiple different groups and different organizations. Some are local, some are national, some are regional, some are international NGOs, and they're sort of building their own understanding of what works and all of this nuance that comes with this being there, and it's a very different approach culturally, in every single way.
yeah, thank you. Craig, next question. How do you envisage in phase two, and I know in your conversations with IFC and other organizations, that the pricing structure might work if an organization on this call actually said,
Yeah.
what would it look like if I had wanted 10 places of the 100 next year? Can you easily answer
Yeah.
that now, or is that still a work in
Yeah, I
progress?
can. This is part of the learning journey as well, is for the past sort of in 8.5, 9 years, we've been held together with sticky tape and glue in terms of funding, which is a familiar story in the sector. And we've got to the point where we have hit a point where we have to do this properly, in terms of reputationally, in terms of the expectations of people when they come to us. So our pricing is, and thinking about this in terms of the return investment, is £2,750 per person for a block of 10. Um, if you want some, you let me know as soon as possible, because it's great. We're in a wonderful position right now of having a fantastic reviews and having a really solid sort of evidence plan for next year, and there's a lot of interest. So please do let me know. Um, but I think we have sort of maybe 30, 40 potentially places left for next year.
Great. Thanks, Craig. And just want a question that was raised further up that I think you may have addressed in the slide deck, but it was about the global faculty. You did put a slide up on that, but
Yeah.
just wondering if you want to just maybe go back and say a few more things about that,
The end game
or
for
or
this
just talk to it.
project, the end game for this project is for this to be a completely owned project, and we've taken big steps this year. That's not me. That is I've used my big white elbows to create this space. Um, and the idea is that we're increasingly, I'm taking less of a role within this as the global faculty come in. So we've got, some long-term collaborators like Jess, Dr. Jess Oddy, Atuato. We've got Steve Marigi, who is trustee of the Four and CEO of We See Hope and former CEO of Primary Care International. We have Natula Wilson, who is director of partnerships at Ashesi University in Ghana. We have Lillian Mabonga, Living Water International in East Africa, actually across the whole of Africa. We've got people like um, Irene Arellano, who's former Care, who's disappeared off. We we started to get a bit offended actually by the number of Care people who ended up moving on once they'd taken part in our program. Sorry about that, Care. But I think in all seriousness, though, I think the mobility of the sector, I think the mobility within the sector is something that we're very conscious of. And this is again part of that ecosystem approach. I think there are direct benefits in terms of returns on investment, but we're here for the long term, the long journey, and just building, building and equipping and exploring.
It's certainly, from my observation, the faculty was not as formed in the original pilot, and certainly, developed beautifully along the program. Clearly, part of your passion, part of the strong interest from participants to have that kind of personal connection
Oh,
to mentoring and motivation, but also a sign of, I think, the respect of some of the faculty members that joined along the journey. So, congratulations. It was a good
and
cohort.
every single
Would like
person
to,
we asked said yes, which says a
yes,
lot, I think.
yeah, you were hard to say no to, Craig, I have to tell you. Okay, so opening up the floor for questions that were not in the chat, please just pop your hand up and go for it. Anne,
Yeah, sorry, me again. Uh, so yeah, congratulations first of all, definitely to both of you. It's fantastic to see how that has developed over the time that we have followed it as part of reimagining fundraising. Um, I wanted to come a bit back to your program, but also maybe to my question of on the research part. So is part of your program, or is that the point of mentorship to actually support in understanding the specific market and exploring these value spaces and how that is done and how to get that knowledge, how to evaluate it, because I think there's so much in that quite specific context that is not
Yeah.
always as easy. Yeah.
It's not, and we talk about everything in terms of flows as well, flows of capital, and just have really big conversations about what that looks like in, say, India versus Myanmar, for example. Okay, where is the wealth? Where are the opportunities? And I I find that people already know, people already have this insight and understanding into where many of the opportunities are, but they're so deeply in this institutional rut that it's actually really hard to reposition and communicate in a way that is engaging for different people and audiences. What we talk a lot about is, what is a donor? And it sounds like a really simple question, but unpacking that is really deeply interesting, and touches on power, on race, on gender, etc. But also, how do we communicate with donors? And suddenly, once we stop thinking about donors within that rut and recognize that actually, and this is again coming back to the blue ocean strategy, is that there are so many opportunities, and the more conversations we're having, the more learning we're getting, and that in itself is a competitive advantage. Okay, having this mindset and being able to have those conversations and then bring that together with your peers, and that's another part of what we're seeing as well, because that sort of understanding the limits of that is something I can't do in Southeast Asia or Latin America. I can't say, the limits of that group. This is how you should approach these people, because that is deeply you know, culturally relative, sorry. And so that's why, again, with this next year, the regional coaching and the peer network building is going to be incredibly important. But we do, and again, it's doing this, we're trying to get away from this central idea of expertise as well. Is that we at Fundraising Radicals have this expertise, okay, about how fundraising works. And actually this is an innovation, this is a constant exploration and an expedition kind of to understand what is possible within your market. Because in many cases, these are the only organizations that are doing this in their market. And they're up against, there's no charity law in Myanmar. It's basically the sponsors of monks, the sort of Chinese franchises are the key markets, but it's only accessible if you can access the sort of people at the top. So that requires a very deep network and links to the junta and lots of other difficult things. But what we find is that these people these partners, these participants are so adept at navigating their realities anyway. But it's just, again, having this mindset shift that you can do the same work, but just direct that towards funding conversations. I think that's transformative for a lot of people.
Thanks, Craig.
Sorry, I'll answer these questions in much shorter fashion.
I know.
Sorry, Kath.
Any other questions from the group?
Here, I was just here, Kath. I was just wondering also in terms of you mentioned funding and that challenge of actually getting the time and the investment and priority to these programs. And like, yeah, some of our programs come through it's called Child, like an impact fund internally. And but often the training aspect is not part of it. And I'm just wondering if we can kind of get it out through our whatever HR we have, through the in funding, like when there is an application that might also, where needed, be part of it.
I think so, and I think it just has to be formalized.
Yeah,
While it remains informal, it becomes this sort of and you know, the time challenge. I mean, it's great that Craig's been in New Zealand, certainly for Care Australia participants in Asia Pacific region, because it's somewhat in the time zone. And I know, Craig, you've offered content at all times of the day. But we just found, if it's not formalized through some process, a HR training and development process, or a attached to funding or attached to something, it's the old, the old adage, you value what you pay for, or you value what you measure, and all those kind of things. Like, it just needs to be formalized, I think, for people to actually to just get it in their busy workloads. Because it's from our observation, it's incredibly valuable when they do. But it's been, I would say, as an overall summary to that, the greatest results for care participants have been the ones that have been personally motivated to engage and to drive themselves. The motivation hasn't come from the organisations themselves, and I think that's the dynamic that has to shift. Yeah, Craig, you're on mute.
And there's a lot of mistrust about another capacity building coming centrally as well. It takes a lot of time to convince people that this is a value, and it takes time for people to see the value. But we try to sort of, and that's something we're going to do differently next year in terms of the onboarding as well. I think we've got enough testimonials to really, we're putting together a brochure for this in terms of actually playing a much more sort of selling role to say, look, this is the value of this, and take a much more proactive role in that sense, rather than just expecting non-profit partners just to put it around their networks. We're going to have some solid collateral to say, look, this is the value of this, and this is the requirement, this is the expectation, this is what you need to do.
This is the commitment.
Part of this. Yeah,
yeah,
because it's going to be 3 to 3.5 hours a week. But we had so many people with like sharing their logins as well. So we'd have like organizations that have like maybe 7 or 8 people with the same name turning up for webinars, because the entire team would join. And that's great from our perspective. That's fantastic, because then it becomes a shared endeavor, and that peer-to-peer stuff is happening locally. And that happened in Laos, and I think that was really important. They've set up their own private sector engagement.
Yeah, it's incredible what they're doing there
now.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Craig. Any other questions? If not, we will let everyone go a little bit earlier this evening. I know it is 9:47 for Craig, another late night for reimagining fundraising. Again, thanks everyone for coming along to the deep dive. The recording will be available to all reimagining fundraising participant organisations to circulate to their networks. We strongly encourage that you do. Craig and I will also make sure that there is maybe the pack of information that is broader than what was shared today, today is available for circulation, and we are both happy to answer any questions from any organisation. Craig, thank you so much. This pilot would not have succeeded without you. So
Oh, you
you have,
all reimagining
I'm sure
fundraising.
it would have exceeded without me. But really, your absolute passion and dedication has been incredible. So thank you formally from us. And without ado, good evening, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
My email's in the
Bye-bye.
chat if anyone wants to ask any questions
Great.
as well. Okay. Take care.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye
Thank
now.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
And
There
then
you
were two.
go. And then there were two. Well done. I think that went well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So yeah, fantastic. So fantastic. How do I stop? I'll stop the recording.